How did the Romans go from literally living in huts near a river to controlling pretty much the entire world? Today, we're going to delve into the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. This is one of my favorite topics and way messier than most people think. The origin story starts in Italy around 2,700 years ago. It sounds completely made up, like a movie, but the Romans believed it. 2 twin babies abandoned at birth, left out in the wild to die. But instead they get raised by a wolf, a literal wolf. One of them, called Romulus, ends up killing his twin brother, who then goes on to found Rome in 753. So right from the very beginning of their empire, it was built upon violence. At the very beginning, Rome was nothing special, just another settlement surrounded by enemies. But what made them different, and for what would come, was their mindset. They didn't just give up when they lost a battle. They'd get absolutely annihilated within the first few years, and then come back smarter. They would pretty much analyze what worked for their enemies, copy that, fix it, and try it again. Eventually Rome ditches kings and becomes a republic, which is a pretty big deal. No single leader, instead you've got a senate, an elected system. That system, it worked. Rome over the years slowly starts expanding, then it progresses faster and faster. After years they run into a serious problem, Carthage. This wasn't just another enemy, this was a proper rival. This is where things get interesting. Carthage had this general, name was Hannibal Barca, like a hectic name, and he literally marched an army, including elephants, over the Alps. Like, imagine yourself as a Roman soldier seeing an army of elephants with soldiers approaching. It'd be terrifying. And for years since then, Rome is still on the back foot, losing badly. But this is kind of Rome's thing. They're the type of civilization that just outlast you. They eventually turn it around and wipe Carthage out. There's basically no one to challenge them, but then this is where it starts to change again. Because once Rome starts getting power, it also starts to get messy. There's more money, more land, more influence, and more people to become greedy. Generals start becoming less loyal to Rome and more loyal to their armies, and this is where you get people like Julius Caesar. He was an absolute legend in battle. People loved him, but that is the dangerous part. The reason for that is he's gaining too much power too fast. So come 49 BC, Julius Caesar basically states, yep, I'm taking over, and a civil war erupts. He wins, and just like that, the Republic is practically done. But the crazy part is, he doesn't even get to enjoy it. In 44 BC, he was assassinated. A group of senators, including his main friend, Marcus Brutus. After all that chaos, Rome finally stabilizes under Augustus. This era is where Rome peaks, like properly peaks. It's an era called Pax Romana. Basically, they had 200 years of relative peace. During this time, Rome becomes insane. It basically stretches from Britain all across Europe, into the Middle East, and even down into North Africa. This is where they started conquering. They built roads everywhere. Some we even still use today. They built aqueducts and massive cities wherever they went. How about their army? Pretty much untouchable at this point. Rome isn't just powerful at this point, they're permanent. But underneath all that, as many good things are, nothing can last forever, and things start slipping. The empire itself starts to get too big, and you start getting leaders who just aren't strong enough. Some of them only lasted months before getting killed, and this is where the economies started dropping. Prices started going up, people were struggling, and the army itself started to decline. Instead of Romans for the army, they start hiring outsiders, which on paper sounds fine, but those outsiders don't care about Rome itself. Then the pressure starts building from the outside, and people start pushing into Rome's territory. One of the big enemies was the Visigoths in 410 AD. They do something no one thought was possible. They completely sack Rome. After nearly 800 years of feeling untouchable, they're finally done. At that very moment, it breaks something, and it's just a slow decline down. More invasions take place, the instability increases, until finally, in 476 AD, the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is removed. And that's it. What we know as Rome is gone. But what's interesting is Rome itself didn't just vanish, it stuck around. The ideas, the laws, the architecture, the politics, it's all still part of our world today. They had such a huge influence that it's carried through. So yeah, Rome fell, but in a way that never truly left. And as always, if you like this kind of history, don't forget to chuck us a like and follow. I've got loads more on the way from different civilizations around the world. Cheers. Just how many abandoned townships are there in New Zealand, and why? Because it's more than you'd think. Scattered all across the country, there are places that used to be full of life. Families, jobs, people building something. And today, they're nothing, just empty buildings, roads, maybe some ruins and bushwalks. It's almost like everyone one day woke up and decided to just leave. And that's the strange part, because some of them actually disappeared overnight. But the question is, what actually makes a town just disappear? When you look into it, these townships weren't actually built to last forever either. It was mainly because someone had come across something such as gold, coal, or timber. But that one find became someone's everything, and people would flock to these areas, build homes, have families. They at the time probably thought it was permanent, but beneath it all, there was this quiet reality taking hold. If that one thing disappeared, then pretty much everything else would too. And that's almost what happened to some of these towns. There's a place down in Otago called St. Bathans. Right now you can go and visit it. It's quiet, peaceful, got a big blue lake, but that big blue lake never used to be there. It used to be a gold mining township, and I mean, when they mined the gold, they mined the gold. They literally tore the land apart. They used a method very similar to how the Romans used to blast mountains away with water. They would use a high pressure system, and that system would pretty much just blast entire hills away. There was no digging. They just absolutely totaled the land. They continued this day after day until the land pretty much gave in and collapsed in on itself. That gaping hole filled with water, that was it. The town was over. Imagine watching the place you'd built lives at just completely disappear, your entire job overnight gone. Then in the South Island you've got Waiuta, but this one's a little bit different because nothing dramatic happened here. No disaster, no big event, just stopped. Everything there revolved around one mine. Jobs, houses, the entire community was tied to this mine, and then when it shut down, that was pretty much the end of the township. Within weeks, the township was vacant. Homes were left behind, buildings just sitting there as if people were gonna come back. Now it's all just ruins. It does make you think today, how many places are just one shutdown from the same eventuality? But now we move our focus to Denniston, and it's one of those places if you visit, you look at, and you're like, why the hell would anyone live there? It's up on top of this plateau, cold, windy, isolated. It's a place where you wouldn't think people would want to settle. But once again, that one thing drew them in. And that one thing was coal. The entire township was built around it. Essentially built one of the steepest engineering feats that have been seen at that time to the top of the plateau to get the coal from the top out. They basically dropped wagons down a cliff, and danger became a part of normal day life. But when the coal ran out or stopped being worth anything, so did the township. And that moves us on to our next location. Port Craig, way down south, once again, in the middle of nowhere, no roads, no easy access. So what did they do? It was essentially just bush and coastline, and somehow they built a town in there. It was one of the largest sawmilling operations in New Zealand's history. They built access via massive wooden viaducts across valleys to get in and out. It actually worked for a while as well, but like many of these places, the isolation must get to people at some point. When the logging industry started to slow down and there weren't really anything there for people to stay together, the town itself shut down. So what do you do in that situation? People just leave. And the town itself was left abandoned. It's now been taken over by the forest again, but the once great forest that existed doesn't. They completely stripped it bare, which leads us on to our next location, Whangamamona. And this one has quite an interesting bit of history to it. It was a township that got cut off, roads changed, people started leaving, but the township didn't disappear. The people pushed back. They declared themselves a republic and basically refused to disappear. They also elected a goat as mayor. And somehow the township kept going, not booming, but it's still there. I guess part of the moral of this story could be surviving isn't always about the resources, it's about the people and community we live amongst. But when you look at all of these places together, you start to notice a pattern. They weren't just abandoned randomly, they were all built around a moment that gave people purpose. And when that moment ended, everything ended with it. But the strange part is, people built their lives there thinking it would last, only to one day completely walk away. All of these places that I've listed in this video you can go and visit as well. They are amazing townships with a lot of history, a deep set history. So the next time you are in these townships or driving through, just remember what these townships have been through, and if they still stand today, what a miraculous feat of achievement that is. And as always, there are loads more forgotten places in New Zealand, so if you want me to cover any more, drop a comment below and I'll do my best. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode of Lost in Time, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Cheers. Are we really the first advanced civilization on Earth? Or are we just the latest one to survive? Because if everything we've built today just disappeared, in a few thousand years, would anyone really know we were here? By the end of this video, we're going to see why entire civilizations could just vanish, and just how there might be more history right beneath us than we've ever found before. Let's start with something a little bit uncomfortable. Just imagine for a moment, life as we know it today, humanity, civilization, just disappeared. No people, no maintenance, no control. What happens next is a sequence of events. Any ideas? Drop them down below if you have any thoughts. First year, the power grid would fail. Come 10 years, cities start collapsing. And in the short span of 100 years, nature starts pushing back through everything we've built. And by 1,000, if you guessed it, you'd be right, most buildings are gone. But at the mark of around 2,000 years, almost nothing remains except one thing. No, it's not phones, it's not the internet, it's not satellites. Everything we know as of today would be gone except stone. So in that scenario, if that happens to us, what do you think we'd find if that scenario happened before us? When we actually look at ancient history, what do we actually see? We see massive structures, mostly built out of what? Stone. We have examples all around us, the pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu, even the newly discovered Göbekli Tepe. And that was built over 11,000 years ago. Before tools, before phones, before civilization was said to have existed, and yet they built something that stood the test of time. Now I always think about this, if a civilization existed not millions of years ago, but around 10,000, what would be left? Not metal, not technology, just that one thing again, stone. Now here's where things get a little bit uncomfortable on the whole timeline scale. We like as humans to think we know all of history, but we don't. What we know is fragments and pieces of the past we're trying to put together like a puzzle. For example, the Sahara Desert, it was once green, filled with trees, flowing rivers, had animals, and potentially human life. Now, it's just endless sand. And the same goes for Antarctica. We have proof of this, locked kilometers beneath the ice. They've found traces of flora and fauna, insects, and entire ecosystem that existed. But the most amazing thing is, we haven't even seen most of what's beneath the ice. Our oceans, for example, cover over 70% of the planet. We've only explored 10%. Think about how much land used to be above the water, which is now submerged beneath it. Who knows what could be sitting down there? The real question isn't, what have we found? It's, what haven't we found? And this is where a theory begins, because Earth doesn't just reset, it reshapes itself. Volcanoes erupt, ice ages begin, floods completely reshape continents. Entire populations can just disappear without a trace. Take Pompeii for example, a full city, thriving population, gone in hours and still frozen in time. Now imagine we scale that up 10, 20, 30 times larger. Multiple events across the planet all happening within a short period of each other. An ancient advanced civilization could collapse completely within generations and be forgotten almost forever. All we have to do is look at the dinosaurs, and the meteor that came down, struck the Earth, wiped out over 90% of creatures, all within 2 years. Some researchers already believe that this has happened to the human race before. Writers like Graham Hancock suggest there could have been earlier advanced societies. This was all before recorded history, not exactly like us, but advanced enough to build and plan, and also organize and understand the world deeply. And then the possibility of something major happening, a cataclysm, a reset, and all that was left are the fragments we find today. Structures, stories, legends, myth, they all come from something. Can it be just pure coincidence that myth floods exist across entire cultures who apparently never met. Even ancient stories describing destruction, cities sinking, begs the question, did ancient civilizations that possibly were advanced get wiped out by a natural disaster? Mainstream archaeology, however, does not support a global lost advanced civilization like ours. And that, however, does matter because it all boils down to evidence. But even within accepted history, there are gaps, and there's loads of them as well. And here's the part that I love, that I feel like people are starting to think about. Imagine what the Earth would be like 10,000 years from now if we disappeared today. Imagine if a new species of humanoid started to evolve and existed 10,000 years from now, or something intelligent came from outer space and discovered the planet. What would they find? I'm sure it wouldn't be cities or skyscrapers. They would most likely find ruins, fragments buried underground. They might find some carvings, parts of structures, or stone foundations. Who knows, it could all be underneath kilometers of water by that point. But either way, they would look at it and probably ask the same questions we do today. How did they build this? Who were they? And were they the first? And here's the twist. They might not actually realize just how advanced we really were. Because as we talked about earlier, most of what defines us today would be gone. So, are we the first advanced civilization? Maybe, maybe not. But what we do know is that civilization itself is fragile and history has gaps. It's incomplete and time doesn't just pass, it erases things. And if something existed before us, it wouldn't look like a sci-fi city today. It would look like exactly what we see today. Ruins, mysteries, laws, a past that fully doesn't just make sense. So the real question isn't, are we first? It's how many potentially were before us and what has been lost along the way. I, for one, am still waiting to see what else is going to be discovered within my lifetime. Drop your thoughts down below if there's more in the Amazon rainforest, Sahara Desert, and Antarctica, or are there lost continents just waiting for us under the ocean? And as always, if you enjoy Forgotten History, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Cheers.